Finally, 7 hours ago, the green flag fell on the 45th running of the Superflo 12 Hours of Sebring. Everyone knew the key was patience. James Weaver waited almost a lap before he hit the pole sitter, Yannick Dalmas. And after that, the hits came hard and fast. John Green hit Henri Malway like he was standing still, which of course he was. And then Bill Adams stopped the race for an hour by knocking the wall down. Back on ESPN2 with our coverage of the Exxon Superflo 12 Hours of Sebring. We left you under a red flag. We are back under green, and the pace has been fast and furious. We have an interesting battle at the front of the field. It is still the Ferrari versus the Ford, Riley and Scott chassis. It is now down to a two-car battle on the lead lap. Let's take a look at how they're running as we rejoin you. The pole sitter Dalmas is back at the head of the field and has nearly a lap on Butch Leitzinger, the Daytona winner, who has just gotten into that car. The World Sports Cars occupy the top 6 spots. The number 30 Ferrari has gone 1 lap down. The rest of the World Sports Cars as much as 9 laps down. The first GTS car is the Robinson Olds Aurora, badly damaged after a collision earlier in the race. This takes you all the way back through the field. More than 60 cars in 4 divisions started the race. I'm Dave Despain along with Jeremy Dale topside, Marty Reed and Rick DeBrule along pit road. Again, about 7 hours into a 12-hour race. Attrition has been a big story, but throughout this event, we've had great competition at the head of the field, and that continues now as the Ferrari and the Ford duke it out just as they did here back in the 60s. It is history repeated at one of the most historic racetracks anywhere in the world. We have had another big crash. This picture is live, and this happened moments ago, and this is the car that started on the outside of the front row. One of the 3 Ferraris is badly damaged.
Yeah, and this looks like it's leading onto the front straightaway here, just on the outside of the racetrack. We obviously full course yellow in this situation. That car definitely stalled and not able to continue from where it is.
This will be perhaps an extended yellow, and we have just recently come off an extended yellow that mainly was for housekeeping purposes. We had a blown engine and a car stop. It appears we have 2 cars involved in this, and that would seem to indicate perhaps collision. The other car involved is this car, the 05, and it has come to rest near the entrance to the pit road.
And we haven't really, we looked at that leaderboard and we saw that Butch Leitzinger was in second place, almost a lap down. And just before we came on air, Butch was working incredibly hard to keep that car in front of the 3 car to stay on the main lap, on the lead lap. With this full course yellow, Butch should be able to drive around and join the back of the field, and he will have made up that lap. So all that hard driving that he did in the last 10 minutes just before we came on the air will really pay off. You can see he's getting pointed by the pace car now, and as soon as they pick up the 3 car, they will have the leader. So Butch Leitzinger is a hero for his guys at this moment.
Leitzinger says, "Thank you very much. I will take that." Butch, who has been his first stint in the car, the Daytona winner who had not gotten into the car until the last pit stop for number 16, really had his hands full all day long. One of the patterns of the race, Jeremy, has been that when the time came, the Ferrari drivers could put the hammer down and pass the Ford-powered Riley and Scott chassis. Here you see the driver coming out of number 43 after that contact, apparently with the 05 car, the team of William Stitt, Joe Cogbill, John Barassa, and Steve Reibel. We'll have more on this, but let's first update the other classes of competition, and we'll go first to Rick DeBrule.
Well, first class we want to talk about is GTS1, and I got to tell you, about an hour into this race, you wouldn't have given an awful lot for their chances today. That's because the car that was being driven by Irv Hare ran into the back of their teammate's car, the one being driven by Joe Pezza, knocked the hood off, all kinds of damage to the front end. But guess what? Here we are almost 7 hours into the race. That car is still out there. Not only is it still running, but it is leading the GTS1 division. It's got a healthy lead over the second place car, which is a Porsche, the 01 Porsche that's still out there. Once again, because of the yellow, the 01 car, the 11 car is just coming down pit road right now. They're going to make just a little splash for fuel, and then they're going to send them back out. But once again, as you take a look at this car, remember, no hood. They've been out there like this for at least 6 hours. Now the question we have, though, is what's going to happen when it comes time to go racing at night. They still apparently have one set of headlights. You'll see them pulling all the tape off right now. The headlights on the right side, however, if you look on the right side, you can see they're pretty severely damaged. Now, as we understand it, it's okay for them to run with just one set of headlights. When we say one set of headlights, it's only one set on one side. There's actually 3 headlights in that glob. But they pulled the tape off, and they're going to send them back out. Looks like they're just putting in fuel once again. They're satisfied with what the situation is with the 11 car. Keep going back out into the race to take the lead once again, to continue the lead with GTS1. 2 more divisions to talk about. Let's go back to Marty.
All right, thanks, Rick. We're going to zero in on the 61 car. They are in control of GTS2. That's the Conrad Motorsports team. In fact, Bob Wallach, you can see him here. He's got shirts, sleeves, and he's ready to go pretty soon. Vito Rossler is in the car right now. They have a 1-lap lead over their rest of their division, and they are contemplating coming in on this yellow. Let's also update you on GT3, because that's another interesting story. The 50 car, that's another Porsche 911. Jorge Trios, Dennis Asse, and Joe Vardy in that team, and they were the big beneficiaries. If you were with us at 3:30 when we went off the air last, that big crash with Bill Adam, well, the number 76 Team ARE was in the pits when the red flag came out. That allowed that number 50 car to come all the way around. When they came back to green, they were a full lap up. That's exactly where they are right now.
Well, the old saying in racing, I'd rather be lucky than good, and luck has paid off there. Although let's also make the point that that team is very, very good. They have been at or near the front from the drop of the green flag. They now have a lap on the field in the GTS division. A little red Porsche back there just coming into view. Nice camera work. That is number 50. And Ossie, Vardy, and company have done a great job in keeping that car in contention all day long, and then of course they get the break with the yellow flag. There may very well not be a repeat victory here this year, and the opportunity for Van de Poel to make history appears to have gone out the window. This is the number 1 car that won the race last year. The indication is that the engine has blown in the car. Van de Poel, the Belgian, is one of the drivers of this car. He's won the race or been in the winning car the last 2 years, and only one driver in history, Olivier Jean-de-Bion, has won this race 3 years running. Looks like it's over for these guys.
Yeah, Scott Sharp on board there. He's got his gloves off. He's been on the radio. He's talking to these guys. And I think we're going to go to a replay here and have a look at what happened. Chances are it probably just blew up and started smoking. Oh boy, it lost a lot of, looks like coolant there. And I'm surprised no one spun in that coolant. That is a big surprise. And you can see them cleaning it up there. Very, very surprising here. This car that won Daytona last year, won the 12-hour of Sebring last year, has now blown motors in both of the endurance races.
The way it goes. Sometimes you're a hero, sometimes you're a zero. We'll take a break. Come back in a moment with more of the Superflo 12 Hours of Sebring. The Superflo 12 Hours of Sebring is brought to you by Exxon Superflo Motor Oil. Provides protection that's fast, protection that lasts. And by Virgin Interactive. Get the ultimate in driving games from official sports car GT sponsor, Virgin Interactive. Not to make light of it, but one of the toughest jobs of this business is to figure out which costume to wear. It depends on which network you're on. Usually on the Deuce, no ties. We're on both networks today, so I decided to split the difference. We're doing this one on the Deuce. We'll be back at 10:30 on ESPN Classic to wrap it all up. I think one of the most interesting things about this race is that the powerhouse teams that we expected to do well are both right out there in front. But behind them, their supporting casts are kind of fallen by the wayside, and it leaves you wondering about the issue of vulnerability.
Well, yeah, the Scandia team that has been up front all day, entered 2 cars. Their second car has just gone out for good. They had problems early on. They were not a factor. And the Dyson team, their winning car from Daytona, has, of course, hit problems, and they're probably not going to be a factor. But both of those teams have good, strong cars. Excellent driver lineups in both those cars, and I think they're going to be there at the end.
We've got great potential here for a shootout in the dark. All kinds of interesting human drama unfolding on pit road, because whatever excitement you see out here on the racetrack, feel something in your heart for the guys down there laboring to keep those cars in one piece and running. Let's get down there with Marty Reed.
Well, you go in 1 year from feast, and the next year it's famine. What happened out there? You guys know yet?
Well, I don't really know yet. Scott said that the engine let go and he spun on his own oil. They're towing him in at the moment. We're not sure whether we lost an oil line or a water hose, and we're going to go and have a look. But, you know, one thing for sure, it's put us out of any chance of winning here.
You feel like all the good breaks that you had last year are just coming back to haunt you now?
You know, this business is an emotional roller coaster. You know, it's up and down. It's hard to believe.
Wayne Taylor.
So it happens occasionally. The Daytona winning car a year ago, broken at Daytona. The Sebring winning car a year ago, broken at Sebring. There appears to be a pattern here. Let's talk a little bit about oils. We have just the guy who can do that with us here. This is Joe Burkle, and he's the manager of motor oils for Exxon. And you guys have signed on to this whole new plan in sports car racing for 3 years. You're obviously excited about what's happening in this.
Dave, we sure are. I mean, the Sebring has always had a great tradition. This is the 45th running of the race. Endurance racing is always a great way to challenge your products, the drivers, and the teamwork as well. So we couldn't be happier to be associated with it.
3 years down the road, how far is Andy Evans going to have taken this deal? Is it going to be as big as his vision of it?
Oh, we're excited about it. They've done a lot of innovative and unique things early on to really juice up this side of the sports car circuit. So we're excited about it.
Appreciate you jumping in to support it. It is, of course, professional sports car racing, the new name for what was IMSA, and we've got a heck of a professional sports car race going on right here on your television screen. We'll be back with more of the Superflo 12 Hours in a moment. Speaking of professional sports car racing, there is the new logo. We're going to see a lot of that as they move this division into a new level, if you will. Not to be too cliched about it, but they are really going to they have some very big plans for where they're going to take this thing. We're going to take a look at the top 10. Damas and Leitzinger on the same lap. Now, Scott Sharp, the fourth place car, has just blown the engine, so he's going to plummet down the board. And I think it would be worth talking a little bit about that fifth place car, the 63. We haven't given them a lot of call today. That is the Mazda Kudzu, Jim Downing's machine, and they have very patiently worked their way, tortoise and hairstyle, up into a top 5 position here, soon to be top 4, as Sharp continues to drop further downfield. We pretty well documented the GTS-1 story with Robinson's battered but apparently able Oldsmobile 10 laps down to the leader, but more importantly 2 laps up on the Roar Porsche, which is right behind it on the overall leaderboard, and second in the GTS-1 division. Old Bob Wallach sitting there in the class lead for GTS-2, and Joe Vardy is in 10th spot, the GTS-3 leader, which means that you have all 4 division leaders in the top 10, and the race leaders apparently contemplating pit stops. This is the number 30, the third place Ferrari, also coming on pit road, the number 16 Dyson car. So wholesale shuffle of pit activity. I expect anticipating a quick return to green here. The sun beginning to set, starting to get dark. The headlights start to matter now, and it becomes very, very interesting how you make that transition into the night. I want to welcome all the folks who have just joined us from ESPN News. We're glad to see you down here. The news is it's hard to run 12 hours at Sebring. Things break, cars crash, people get tired, and ultimately it is he who endures best who wins this race. These guys, for example, had a big lead, an hour ago, ran the car out of gas, the long coast in, and now the Ferrari is a lap down, and they're going under the nose here for some sort of repair, perhaps. They changed the nose on this car shortly after they ran out of gas. Maybe Rick DeBrule can tell us what's going on.
Indeed, the car's come in. They have gone ahead and made the driver change. They're going to go ahead and change the nose. There's some confusion as to what was going on with that initially. We're going to find out the word on that. This team is also upset because they say they were put a lap down during 2 yellow flags ago. As a result, they feel they've gotten behind. Now they're going to go ahead and refit the nose. It may be just a problem with making sure they've got a nose that has proper working headlights. This is not the nose that was on before that they took off, so they've got a new nose they're putting on. They've got a full supply of spares in the back that they've been able to go to. And I got to tell you, if you walk along the back here, you can see a whole row of noses for all the different teams. Now we're going to go ahead and walk up to Kevin Durant for just a second. Is there an overheating problem? Why change the nose?
We changed the nose primarily just to get fresh lights. We start the race with a daytime nose and normal technology lights that are inexpensive. Now we go to high technology bright lights for the darkness.
So you can see at night. Now let's talk about the fact you guys were upset about going a lap down. What happened?
Yeah, we were, you know, racing being racing. There's a little rules procedure change this year, and and I don't think it's working. It's not working the way sports car intended it or the way the competitors like it.
Have they changed it so that if they rectified the situation so you're on the proper lap now?
Well, by nature, we ended, because of the way this thing's working, naturally we ended back up where we need to be, where we think we should be. So it's okay, and they're working real hard to try and fix it.
So you're happy for the time being?
I don't know about how happy I am about it, but they're working on it.
All right, Kevin Doran being rather political there.
Being a little cagey about it, I suspect it's a reference to the new pace car procedure.
Absolutely, and I think Kevin feels that they came out on the short end of the deal on one of these full course yellows. Having said that, they just came out on the right end of the deal, and he did acknowledge that. They came out on the right end of the deal in the sense that they got this lap back because they were out in front of the lead car. So, you know, sometimes it works for you, sometimes it works against you.
So we continue to follow the progress of the Ferraris. We'll bid a fond farewell to the folks from ESPN News, but come on back anytime. We're here until 10:30. Pop quiz, what's on RPM tonight at 7 o'clock? Well, Craig T. Nelson in the driver's seat, coach, driving the 12 hours. Trucks at Homestead, Busch Grand National Cars out at Vegas, and Kenny Mayne is going to tell you all about it. RPM tonight, 7 o'clock tonight, and then again tomorrow night here on ESPN2. That is now a nightly show. They're on 7 nights a week, and you need to catch it because it's pretty interesting stuff. We have a new leader here. Butch Leitzinger has gone back to the top of the leaderboard. He won the last 3 races last year and won the opening race this year, not insignificant. It leads the 24 hours of Daytona and now leads here at Sebring. I guess life is fun for Butch Leitzinger.
Well, we talked about how he really caught the break there on that yellow, getting pointed by. He worked very hard before that yellow to stay in front, and did a great job and did it, and really had to defend his position, and it's really paid off for them.
He's the one with no roof. Number 16 is Butch Leitzinger. That is a world sports car. They are $400,000 to $500,000 pieces of racing equipment that provide an awful lot of thrills, whether you're driving it or watching it. Here's how he got the lead. This is the pit stop for the number 3 Ferrari. Andy Evans goes into the cockpit. I think life is good for Leitzinger. Life is good when you're Bill Gates' banker and the new owner of professional sports car racing and the owner of the Sebring racetrack and the owner of 3 Ferraris, 2 of which are second and third on the racetrack. It is a success story indeed. Andy Evans, however, with that pit stop, did lose the lead, and Leitzinger is now in command of the race. And we look at the traffic jam in front of him when this thing comes back to green.
Now, in the old days, what we would have done here is the pace car would have pointed all these cars by that are in front of him and picked up the leader, and all of those cars would have made up a lap. Now, once you picked up the leader initially, the field stays set. So now Butch has to work his way. As we go to green here, Butch is going to have to work his way all the way through this pack.
Going to be wild. Green is in the air. We're racing once again at Sebring. Here comes the Army. There's your GTS 1 leader without a hood. There's Hurley Haywood's car, the little Porsche number 39. Curious stories throughout this field. They're headed into the darkness now. The shadows have long since lengthened and gone, and now the sun will set behind Sunset Curve as Leitzinger starts the process.
And of course, this looks like a Porsche Cup race with a WSC car thrown in. At times, you know, Porsche really dominates the field here in these GT categories, and at times it does look like a Porsche Cup race.
23 911s in the field, spread across 3 classes depending on their configuration, modifications, horsepower, and tire selection. We'll find him at GTS 1, 2, and 3. And right now, I'm sure Butch Leitzinger feels that every one of them is directly in front of him. And the key is be patient and don't get in crossways coming off the corner like that, Butch.
Yeah, and that's, you know, on cold tires at the end of a yellow, coming out of the slowest corner on the racetrack, trying to put all that power to the ground and wanting to get by all these cars. And, of course, here you can see these guys are racing each other and slowing Butch down. And this is not going to make Butch very happy.
I thought I saw a shake of the fist there from young Leitzinger. He, of course, was the 1993 GTU champion. He's really moved up through the ranks. Butch, we're on television. He's unhappy about that. Understandably so. I mean, here's this guy who's got these Ferraris behind him. He's just worked his tail off. You didn't see it at home because it happened before we came back on the air, but for a half hour he was trying to keep that Ferrari behind him to get himself into exactly this position. And now just when he wants to go fast, what he has to do instead is go very slowly and very carefully through the traffic. It's frustrating.
It is very frustrating. I mean, traffic is a part of this race. It's normal. You're going to encounter it every single lap at this racetrack, but after yellow like that, with those concentrated groups of cars together, it will always take a lap or two to get sorted out. For the quickest car on the racetrack to be trying to work its way through that, that is going to create some problems.
One thing that we have seen throughout the course of this event was the ability of the Ferraris in an even fight to drive by these sport-powered Riley and Scott Chassis, the car that Leitzinger is driving. The one time we didn't see that was when he managed to stay on the same lap.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, we have the time in scoring, and that was, at that time, that was as fast as this car had gone. The fastest lap that this 16 car had set was while Butch was trying to stay in front of that Ferrari. So that tells you he was running it about as hard as he could.
He's definitely a fast cat, a fine young driver, a rising star. With all those recent victories to his credit, one of the interesting bits of strategy here was to keep Butch out of the cockpit, actually, for the first half of the race. The issue being that of points. He started in, effectively, the wrong car at Daytona. He started in a car that ultimately blew up. They paid points based on the car that you start the race in, and so he got no points. As a result here, they held him back, waited until it became apparent that the 20 car was in trouble after a crash, and he goes into 16 and now has the opportunity, at least, to get winner's points out of this thing. Here he comes through the traffic, thus far without incident. And who's that I see lurking back behind? Looking for the 3 car. I thought that was the 3 car, but that was the 30 car. Here comes the 3 car. Headlights on. World sports cars all run with the headlights.
And you can see Andy got the little wave there from the 6 car, who gave him some room, not a ton of room, but this is Andy's first stint in the car all day. So, you know, he's now having to settle in and get the feel of the car, and that's a car that's run more than 6 hours at this point. That's not a perfectly fresh, brand new, beautiful race car. That's a car that he's going to have to figure out how to drive it and how to make it go fast, and that's going to take 4 or 5 laps.
There have been a few jokes today at Andy's expense during the course of the telecast. James Weaver making the observation that perhaps the wisest thing he could do on the first lap would not be to run into the back of the car owned by the guy who also owns the sanctioning body. He said it with tongue-in-cheek. The point is, I think, that Andy Evans, bottom line, never mind what he owns and how much money he has, pretty good race car driver. He can hustle that thing really well.
Yeah, he has really developed into a good driver. He's been at it a number of years now, and I think he's worked very hard at it. And he's become a very good driver, and it's really through a lot of hard work and surrounding himself with the right people. He's got very good guys on his team, very good engineer. You know, Fermin Velez has helped him for a number of years now and really helped him with his driving and helped him get competitive, and he can really pedal the car very, very solidly.
I think the other point perhaps worth making is that all of the things that this guy is doing with professional sports car racing ultimately are a labor of love. He's doing this because he loves this kind of competition, and he wants to see these cars fulfill their full potential on the world stage. We're going to take a break with Evans trying to run down the kid Leitzinger. We're at Sebring. It's fun. By 1970, the Le Mans start was gone from Sebring, and this was a classic confrontation. The Germans versus the Italians, Porsche versus Ferrari. Steve McQueen, at the height of his film stardom, was driving a Porsche 908. Mario Andretti, though, was the star of this show. When his car broke, he climbed in the sister Ferrari, and in the final, eventful last hour of the race, was chasing the leaders. Pedro Rodriguez, Porsche, broke. He's out of the race. Andretti then charged through the darkness to catch and pass McQueen and score the second of his 3 Sebring victories. It was Ferrari's only Manufacturers' Championship win of the year, and it was one of Mario's all-time great performances. What a great place. All the history that has played out here through 44 previous runnings of this race. We pick up now the GTS 3 battle. And we've got two class leaders right next to each other. That is the GTS 1, number 61, the greenish and white Porsche, pursued by the red number 50. And that red number 50 has been on and off your screen most of the day. Jorge Trejos, Dennis Ossie, and Joe Vardy are back on top of the heap in the GTS 3 division. And this has been the kind of a race where you can go from first to fourth. I mean, it's not quite stock car racing, but in the span of 10 or 15 minutes, these cars have been tightly grouped all day. Now, finally, they managed to put a lap on the field, and I'm sure there's some comfort in that.
There is some comfort, but as we roll into the darkness here in the next 40 minutes, anything can happen at Sebring, and it often does as it gets dark here. And things often play out in the last hours of the race that make it very interesting. You can see the Saline Mustang there on the right side of the screen, the 65 car. That car is fifth in the GTS 2 class. Its sister car, the 55 car, led the race early on.
So many times in the history of this race, the car leading at the end of 11 hours could not hang on and go on to victory. Now let's jump on board with the BMW number 10, the first Union BMW. Bill Auberlen has driven this car a lot of the day. That's his teammate up there in the number 6. That is Hessert and company, but their day was interrupted by a collision with the Daytona-winning Dyson car number 20, so they are way downfield. On the other hand, Auberlen and company are just one lap down to the leaders in the GTS 3 division. That, of course, the green car is your Daytona winner. Rick DeBrule, I think, can add more to this.
Indeed, we can talk about the fact, you ever wonder how much tires can add in terms of the development of a car? They were going through a series of tire testing that they were doing with Yokohama that they were working on for the car. They were doing a tire test. They brought on a set of tires. They try at about an average speed. They go through several sets. They put one particular set on. They got 2 seconds a lap faster in the tire test. They suddenly realized we've got a compound that's going to work. So think about that. After all the work the team had done on the BMW, the car itself, the tire came in and was able to add 2 seconds a lap to the car just by changing the compound. Needless to say, that's the tire they stuck with.
That's why they call it research and development. And this is BMW's primary U.S. motorsport research and development team for the M3, and it's been that since 1995. Hurley Haywood is directly in front of the number 10, and that is a position fight. The number 39 car, the white Porsche just in front of this green BMW, is the second place car in the GTS 3 division. So that is a position battle. That is your second and third in the class, one lap down to the leading number 50 Porsche. That get a whole lot closer than that.
And I don't want to jinx this BMW team, but that car looks pristine. I mean, it just looks phenomenal after roughly 7 hours of racing. It just really looks great, and I'm amazed because so many of the cars here have been involved in incidents today. The team car to this car as well. It looks like we've got a little run going here down into the sunlight. You can see the quicker WSC car go by, and it looks like the 10 car will be able to pull this off. Very tricky here in the sunlight going down into turn 17 and also down into the hairpin.
They call this Sunset Bend, and as you come to it, you are running directly into the setting sun, and the glare, particularly off an oil-smeared windshield, can be horrible. Not only is the car pristine, but the windshield on that car is perfect. You get great views of the onboard camera here as this position fight continues. And for the moment, it looks like Auberlen and company and BMW have the best of it. Now, right behind these guys would be the fourth place car in this battle. There goes the green car. That's the second place car. Then the white Porsche. And look here. Here comes number 76, the Team ARE Porsche, the 911. Again, the onboard camera shot as we've been riding with him all day. Court Wagner, Kelly Collins, and Gary Blackman are the drivers. Gary Blackman's family runs Ford dealership here in Sebring. They are Ford. And
this will give you a good idea what these guys face up to. That's the perfect view going down to the hairpin of what you've got to look at just driving right into the sun. It's just an incredibly difficult thing for about a half an hour here. And you can see that in this type of condition, you're probably going to be just a little bit more careful going down into that braking zone. You're not going to be quite as bold if you want to make a pass. You're probably going to save that to do it somewhere else.
Jason Jackson Brown running into the sun, and I'm running behind. In GTS, it's not hard to be behind. These guys are close. If you're new to cable, we're the guys who do racing. ESPN2 has qualifying for the Trans-South Financial 400. That, of course, the Winston Cup stock cars. That'll be Friday at 3:30 Eastern Time. That's on the deuce. That's qualifying. Then we move into race weekend and ESPN Classic. We'll have the Busch cars on Saturday at 4 o'clock Eastern Time. That's the Diamond Hill Plywood 200. That's the Saturday activity at Darlington. And then on Sunday, we move into the Winston Cup activity. Note the time change. I told you earlier it was a 12:30 start. It's actually a 1 o'clock start for the race, but you want to be there at 12:30 anyway because that's when NASCAR Today happens. We're the pre-race show. 12:30 for NASCAR Today, 1 o'clock for the race. NASCAR Today will be simulcast. You cannot miss it. It's on both networks. It's fun working for ESPN because every week they send you to the races. You don't even have to pay. Here I am, riding along with the second place car in the GT3 division. A lap down and hustling to try to get it back on the Porsche. That is a lap in front of him. Here is the main straightaway, the front chute, if you will. And there you see the long shadows as that sun begins to become a real issue for the drivers. All day long you have perfect visibility, and then sunset it gets real tough, and then dark it gets impossible. Now you're on board with the 76 car, which is the 4th place car. This is the Team ARE Porsche. Third at Daytona, I believe.
And this car is only running about 3 seconds behind the 39 car, which is third in class. So this is a fairly tightly grouped bunch of cars. This car right in front is the 6 car. Not a factor in this race. This car is a number of laps down, and I'm sure holding up the 76 car.
Let's go to Marty Reed with one of the co-drivers on this very car.
You were right about that third place finish, David, at Daytona. I'm with Kelly Collins, a very long-faced Kelly Collins, because we talked about it right when we came back on the air. You got burned badly by that red flag situation, didn't you?
Yeah, it was really hard luck. I mean, honestly, we had everything going. The yellow just came out right when we were actually running out of fuel. We were timing it perfectly. It was really good luck at that point, and then all of a sudden the full course red flag came out, and they made us sit in the pits, and then for some strange reason we weren't able to get going again until almost the whole field had made a lap before we could even work on the car.
Now, we've still got plenty of time left in this thing. You guys haven't given up, have you?
Oh yeah, we're not going to give up fighting. There's no two ways about it. Once you do one of these races a couple times, you kind of give your whole heart to it, and you're not going to give up until the very end. But it would have been nice. I think we're still in 4th place. We could very honestly be on the same lap. I don't know. But the ARE Yokohama Porsche is going really good right now, and all we can do is just cross our fingers, drive good, stay out of trouble, and the sun's setting, and get it all done.
They should be getting ready to make a stop here soon. Kelly will be climbing back in.
It's interesting how addictive endurance racing is. It's kind of like beating your thumb with a hammer. It feels so good when you stop. Derek Bell, who's probably as good at it as anybody in the world, says he just hates these long races because, man, it is miserable. Everything about him is miserable.
Yeah, but he keeps coming back, doesn't he?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's addictive. It isn't fun, but it's addictive. Something about the challenge of keeping that car running all that time. Something about the challenge of overcoming all the difficulties that 12 hours on this rough old racetrack could throw at you. As we follow the progress of the number 10 BMW on the track, now 13th overall, let's go to Rick DeBruhl in the pit.
Eric Wensberg is the motorsports manager for BMW, and you said you've got a pretty simple philosophy from this point on in the race.
Yeah, we got a little behind with all the excitement and all the yellows. We're a lap down to the leader, but we're catching him at about 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds a lap. We've got Bill Oberlin in, he's our best driver. We've got Derek Hill waiting, so either we're going to the front or we break.
Simple as that. Now, Daytona, you guys pretty much owned it. What's the difference with this race?
We just got a little behind, and we got a little more out of focus than we wanted to. We were down 2 laps. Now we're just down a lap, but we've got to make it back now. We don't want to wait till later in the race.
You're not going to count on them breaking. You want to earn it back.
Damn right we do.
Eric Wensberg, you heard it here first.
That's the kind of attitude that leads to one of 2 things. Either success in this kind of racing, or you're a guy that you just don't happen to see. What is this? What is this? We have no pictures. We're on the radio. It's just like the old days. This is where we all started, isn't it? We have a technical difficulty. We'll fix it. Our tech guys have been on top of it all day long, doing a great job in bringing you what I think are the best pictures I've ever seen from Sebring. And really a very interesting race, despite the fact that the intervals typically grow to 1 or 2 or 3 laps within a class. we've had cars bunched up in particularly this just GTS 3 class all day, and we still have the 2 lead cars on the lead lap. We've been away from it a while, but Leitzinger is still out front over Andy Evans pursuing him and on the same lap for the overall victory. It's the Superflo 12 Hours of Sebring. We'll be right back. Big trouble at Sebring, the Superflo 12 Hours in one of the fastest turns on the racetrack. A flat-out left-hander. We have a car that has obviously hit the tire wall a ton and is stopped in the middle of the road. And I got to think that light shining out of the middle of the tires might be the headlight on another car. Big hit. We're told now that the number 30 Ferrari is involved in this in some way, and we'll document that. Well, that's exactly how it's involved right there. It's all smashed into the tire wall. That conceivably, depending on the angle of the cameras, could be where that headlight was shining from. This car, which led, was a lap down. We'll go on board with the 30 and see if we can figure out what happened here. This is the crew waiting for word. This is the driver. Ooh.
Well, that is one of those spots on the racetrack, and we talked about it earlier, and we've seen a couple of incidents at this spot, and a very fast corner there. And you can see the closing rate on the GTS 3 car there, and he just threw it in there hoping that the GTS 3 car, this car sitting on the racetrack here, was going to let him through, and obviously it didn't.
You'll get a better look at this when we slow it down. Let's document that the 42 is Jarrett Freeman, Simon Gregg, and Michael Duffy, a Porsche 911, and he is still in that car. Watch the right side of the screen as we go slow-mo on this.
And you can see this is pretty close to the corner, and he's a fair ways back. And now this is the turn-in point, and it's a fairly bold move. I mean, it was a very quick closing rate, but a fairly bold move.
And it didn't pay off at all because the 42 got into the side of the Ferrari. Now the Ferrari is in the tire wall, and the 42, Freeman, Gregg, or Duffy, not sure which driver, has also stopped out there on the course. The safety crews motioning all the traffic by so that we don't have a repeat of that earlier incident in which the Acura, here's the driver coming out. That's good news.
And that is a perfect example of the 30 car, which was running 3rd overall, about 2 laps down. You know, the driver is running hard, trying to get those positions back, trying to get back on the lead lap, and those are the kinds of chances you have to take. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And, you know, that was clearly a risk that he took there to throw that car in there and try and pass that slower car, and it clearly was not the right move.
We talked earlier about the closing rate of the fast cars to the slow cars, the need for the slower cars to watch their mirrors, but the reality is with the closing rate, a car, you could be looking in the mirror, and that car 3 seconds before it arrives is not in your view. In this case, this is the outcome. We'll take a break and come back with more. Another Ferrari is toast. Exclusive coverage of the Superflo 12 Hours of Sebring has been brought to you by Exxon Superflo Motor Oil. Provides protection that's fast, protection that lasts. And by Virgin Interactive. Get the ultimate in driving games from official sports car GT sponsor, Virgin Interactive. I promised you a sunset. You saw it there as we were selling you things. This is, of course, the most interesting and in many ways most challenging portion of not only the race but the telecast, because once the light goes away it's very difficult for us to bring you pictures, and unless Andy Evans wants to call Musco and buy 3.6 miles of lights, that will probably be the reality of Sebring. It finishes in the dark, so here's what we do. We cover it down to the point where it starts to get dark, then we leave you. We stay on station here, our pit reporters working hard down there to document the stories in the pits. We come back at 10:30. We bring you up to date on everything that's happened. We show you the headlights running around for about 2 minutes while we try to make sense of it all. And then we meet the winners, and that's the most fun part of all. What a reward it is to come home first at the end of this 12-hour grind. We are under yellow for the big crash in which the Ferrari clipped the back marker, and they both went headlong into the tire wall.
Yeah, and that was not just any Ferrari, but that was a car that had an excellent shot at winning this race, running 3rd overall at the time.
Of the 3 Ferraris, we are now down to 1. It's on the lead lap, chasing Butch Leitzinger. Lots of activity down on pit road. And of course, the focus on pit road now, there's the sunset we promised you. The focus on pit road right now is the strategy. Let's go to Rick DeBrule.
All right, Butch Leitzinger brings the car in. They are going to make this an extended stop. They have decided to go ahead and change brake pads while they've got the yellow. They really weren't even sure they needed to do this, but it's one of those, you know what, while you've got the opportunity, let's go ahead and do that. Now, I also have to tell you that they were going to think about changing the nose, but because of a little off-course excursion they had on the very first lap in terms of a little contact, they're not sure they could get a new nose on quickly and cleanly. So they're going to go ahead and race with the nose that they have on right here. Let's go down to Marty.
Well, you're watching Dennis Ossie. He has pulled behind the wheel, gotten in, and one of the trios has gotten out. That is your leader in GTS 3, a very strong stop. This team knows how to run long endurance races. They've done very well over the years in past. They're not highly funded. They're just going to continue to run their pace. And as far as GTS 2 is concerned, I've looked at Bob Wallach. He's got his hands in his pockets. He's on cruise control. They are definitely running the Conrad Motorsports game plan to a letter T. Let's go down to the 3 car all the way to pit out. Rick, what do you got?
Well, they're going ahead and doing some work on the number 3 car. Stefan Johansson has gotten in. Andy Evans was originally in the car, came in for just a short stint, but now Stefan Johansson has gone in. You can see they're going to go ahead and take the nose off. They looked underneath, but they've apparently decided to stick with this nose. Now, some teams, as Kevin Norton was talking about earlier, go ahead and change the nose because they've got daylights on, cheaper lights. There's a possibility that on another nose they may have better lights, but and not only that, but they're cleaner and clearer. But in this case, they're deciding not to do that. I can tell you the 16 car has already gone out. They finished their brake pad change. That's pretty incredible when you think about it, getting your brake pad changed in about a minute or so.
So Leitzinger will maintain the lead as he returns to the racetrack in front. Butch Leitzinger, your Daytona winner, not in the car that won Daytona. This is the car that blew up at Daytona. The sister car, number 20, went on to win the 24 hours. So Leitzinger looking for his 5th straight series victory, including the last 3 of last year. Came away from that exchange pretty good shape.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's very easy to, there was one of the Riley and Scott teams at Daytona had some problems with some brake pad changes. A couple of times they popped the pistons right out of the calipers. You can see he's missing the louvers over the left front wheel there. That's not a big deal. It'll cause that car to understeer just a little bit. But they popped the pistons right out of the calipers and lost about 5 laps in the process. So it would seem like a fairly simple operation to change those brake pads, but if anything goes wrong, it can be a big problem.
We fully expected a slug out, if you will, between 2 teams. The Dyson entries here with their Riley and Scott chassis and Ford power, and the 3 Ferraris, the 2 Scania machines, and the number 30 Momo Ferrari, and it's been pretty much that. The Momo car has just recently crashed, but the bottom line is we have only 1 left from each of these 2 representative teams. They are on the lead lap, and they're ready to slug it out in the dark. Let's go to Rick and talk about strategy for the nighttime.
Well, you know, strategy in racing, in an endurance race like the 12 hours, is one of those best laid plans of mice and men. Take a classic example, the GTS 1 race. That's where the car, the Hot Wheels car, had the accident early in the morning. They've been driving all day without their nose. They're going to continue doing it. They have no hood. That's obviously not in the plans. They do, however, continue to just forge ahead like they're doing tonight. As for the number 16 car that is in the lead, one thing we will expect to see tonight, and that is Butch Leitzinger in the car a lot. He's got to be in the car a certain period of time so he can get his points. He just got in the car about an hour ago. As a result, he's got to stay in this car, put some time in so he can get the points throughout the course of the evening. So they won't be doing a few extra driver changes, so it should save them just a little bit of time on their pit stops.
So the rules, obviously critical to strategy, and ultimately it's important to keep in mind the long-term goal, the series championship, although opening the season with the 2 big endurance races certainly helps you narrow the focus. Everybody wants to win Daytona and Sebring. Let's go to Marty.
Well, you guys are talking about strategy. The leaders in GTS 2 and 3 both have a 1-lap lead. And normally, if this was like a 2-hour, 3-hour race, we'd be saying, hey, they're definitely in control. And yes, they are. But with this much time left, neither one of the teams is sitting there saying, well, we're just going to automatically sit back and not worry about a thing, because a lot can happen between now and the time we finish this in a little past 10:30 tonight. So they'll try and maintain their pace, try to not have any downtime in the pits. For them, downtime is the one thing that can cost them their chance at victory.
Keep the car on the racetrack and keep it moving. As we talked at the top, it is the systematic destruction of 60 perfectly good race cars, and it's about to get dark. It's better than 3:30 when we left you under red. Looks like we're going to leave you under yellow. They will not get this restarted before the end of our telecast here. So let's take you all the way back through the field and show you how this thing is unfolding as the sun sets over Sebring. It's down to Leitzinger versus Johansson. The Ford, Riley, and Scott Mark III versus the Ferrari up at the head of the field. Then we have the 30 car, which is the cause of this yellow, and it will disappear. In total, on the top 10, we have all 4 classes represented, the top 5 world sports cars, and then the leading GTS car, the damaged car of Robinson, the Oldsmobile. We also have the leading GTS2 and GTS3 cars there as well. And as we start to head for home for this telecast, Jeremy, put your crystal ball in front of you and give me an idea what to anticipate into the night.
Well, I think that the race is really just beginning. You know, now after 7 or 7.5 hours, things have really settled down. You know, we've seen a few cars eliminated by attrition. We've seen some cars eliminated through accidents, and we've got a great battle set up here for the final hours of the race. And it gets, you know, if you think it's interesting in the daylight here, wait till it gets dark. That's when it really gets interesting.
We're going to come back at 10:30 Eastern Time on ESPN Classic, and we will recap what has happened throughout the course of this 12-hour event. Let's get a quick final thought from each of our pit reporters.
Well, first off, you mentioned Butch Leitzinger. Remember, he is working on a 4-race win streak. It seems like he is blessed this year. I got to put my money on the 16 car. Rick, what do you think?
Right now, I'd have to agree with you. But, you know, another thing to think about, this is an endurance event. It's an endurance event for the cars and the drivers. It's also an endurance event for the teams. These guys have been going since 6, 7 o'clock this morning. They've been working hard all week. They're cranking. At this point in time, they're literally just running on adrenaline, especially if their car's up front. If their car's not up front, well, that adrenaline isn't quite pumping as fast, and they have to work a little bit harder. But the point to remember is, when this race is over at about 10:43 tonight, these crews, like the cars and the drivers, will have been through a very long endurance event.
Well, the fun and frolic continues for the big crowd who have gathered here. It really starts to get fun once it gets dark. RPM tonight is coming up at 7 o'clock, and they will have a recap not only of what has happened here, but throughout the racing world. We will be back at 10:30 p.m. on ESPN with highlights of the entire day's activity, highlights and lowlights. I got to tell you, the thing I am most pleased about thus far is that none of the drivers who have been involved in some